Hey guys, welcome back to The Upside, the show where we spotlight the most interesting founders and funders shaping the future from emerging markets and frontier tech. I'm your host, Tage Kene-Okafor. Today's episode features Ghita, a 25-year-old founder from Morocco and CEO of Zero Entropy, an AI infrastructure startup building smarter, faster retrieval systems for generative AI. Here's why this matters. LLMs are powerful, but without good retrieval, they hallucinate, forget, and fail. Zero Entropy wants to fix that by making retrieval systems that feels less like search and more like memory. Ghita's journey is remarkable, from École Polytechnique in France to a master's in math at UC Berkeley, and now building a company in San Fran backed by Initialized Capital, Y Combinator, and angels from OpenAI and Hugging Face. Hi, Ghita. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
And thanks for coming on the show. And congrats on the YC acceptance, yeah, and also the launch of Zero Entropy and the model. That was two weeks ago, right?
Yeah, it was actually last week, but it feels like
It was last week.
way more than that.
Yeah, because in between, the article coming out and now it feels like a lot's happened. You were on
Yes.
TBPN, and I think the article, like your post on LinkedIn, did quite well. People, shouting written for you. How does that feel actually, like, building something important for, the new generation of AI companies that are going to come out from the US and globally?
It's very exciting. There's obviously also a lot of pressure because we want to, live up to the expectation of, everyone who hears about us and knows about us. I think we're working on something that's very, very important for the future of generative AI and general intelligence in general. And so there's definitely a lot to do, and we're trying to move very fast and accomplish a lot in the very small amount of time. But yeah, feels great. And it was great to have the support of people from all over the world and Morocco and everywhere.
That's great to hear. And when you say a small amount of time, is it because of the fast pace that AI moves at? Are you seeing lots of like competition coming up and you have to like stay ahead?
I think it was always true that startups needed to move fast. That's the main advantage that you have, is you can accomplish a lot in a very short amount of time. And it's even more so the case in the AI space. The progress is just exponential, and so you really have to keep the momentum going. There's just no other way. So yeah, I guess we really feel that the pace is accelerating for sure.
All right. Before we go deeper into like, what you're building with Zero Entropy, right? I'd like to go back to your journey, how you go into tech, how you go into math, and the timeline between growing up in Morocco and moving to the US, and what kind of shaped your early career, right, in tech. How has that led you to this point? So if you could give, help us kind of understand the story behind.
Yeah, for sure. So actually, I didn't start with math. I grew up more into physics. I was very passionate about quantum physics. I remember watching countless documentaries about quantum mechanics at a very young age, and participating in competitions to try to explain, the classic experiments of quantum physics and how it worked. And it completely messed up my brain. It was just such a new way of looking at the world. And yeah. So I started with physics, and then that's what I did in Morocco. And then I wanted to keep studying physics. And so I moved to France, and I went to two different schools there. And I actually kept going with physics for a while there. So I got into this school called École Polytechnique, and was still very fascinated by the physics world. But then I discovered that the timelines of, discoveries and progress are much longer than in other fields. And that was kind of in contradiction with my natural personality, where I like to, move very fast and execute and see progress. I'm a bit impatient. And so I guess I did the jump from, quantum physics to statistics in physics to pure statistics, and then applied math and machine learning. There are also a lot of, crossovers between the two fields. So, so I kept going with physics through undergrad, but I discovered that It was very, the timelines to make new breakthroughs and to make progress were much longer than I would hope. And it was not really aligned with my personality, where I'm very impatient and I want to see the results of, progress on more immediate kind of timelines. And so that's why I did the leap from, quantum physics to statistics in physics, and then just basically stats and math and machine learning. And then there, I first looked into more computer vision type of tasks. So I had some experience there. And I remember playing with the first versions of DALI at that time. And I was completely amazed by what we could do with AI already back then. I think this was like 2021 or 2022, something like that. And then I discovered GPT-2. And that was a whole other thing. It was still, they didn't have the instruction version. So it was just, completions. So you couldn't do much with it. But still, it was very impressive. So that's why I started looking more into, LLMs and doing like prompt engineering and trying to build things with that and trying to build assistants. And I guess that's what got me here.
Interesting. And what was the starting point of you building the AI space, right? I think when we spoke last week, you talked about, trying to build an AI system before ChatGPT became a thing, right? So it's like, okay, yes, you pivoted from physics to math, and that started the journey. But what kind of solutions did you try out first? Initially when you just started building in the AI space.
Yeah. So at first it was more like computer vision tasks, especially in healthcare. So the first things that I built were around, semantic segmentation and analyzing CT scans, analyzing like EEG data and things like that. That was before GPT-2. And then when I discovered the LLMs and how much we could do with them, I started really thinking about like assistance and memory. And because back then it was just like chat completions, and so it was not that stateful. It was very stateless. Like you didn't like keep the memory of like previous chats, or grounding the LLM into like your data was like not as widespread as it is now. So that really is what got me into thinking about personal assistant. So at first we were building like an emotional assistant for students, and then we started looking into how can we use LLMs like in sales processes, and now you have all of those AI BDRs that are super widespread. But those were the kind of ideas that I had back then, is how do you use this technology to build assistants that know you, that can help you with your task, that have full context about you, can learn with you. And I guess that's what led to Zero Entropy, with this API that we're building that allows to search across very large knowledge bases, and you can use it to do deep research, you can use it to implement memory, you can use it to connect any knowledge base to your LLM. And I guess that was the journey for me.
All right. And so going deeper into Zero Entropy, right? Can you break down the core problem you're trying to solve, right, with this AI infrastructure or API? And why is improving search capabilities, right, in generative AI so critical? And how does Zero Entropy solve this or approach this challenge differently from other companies trying to tackle the same problem?
So the core problem that we're trying to tackle is, how do you enable LLMs to access search capabilities that are extremely accurate and fast enough to even make sense? Basically, like, we wrote an entire article about this, but we think that AGI requires better retrieval. For the reasons that I explained before, is you need to ground the answers in existing context. Like an LLM with no context about you, about what you're trying to do, about the things that you've tried before, is not as useful as if it had access to all of this information. It can also hallucinate. It can create outputs that do not make sense for you. And so this retrieval accuracy is extremely important. So if you look at the history of search, we started with, keyword like full text matching. So that's like a statistic method of, I have a query and I'm going to look at all of the matches inside my corpus and try to normalize by the frequency of those terms. So it works, but it's not extremely intelligent. It doesn't capture the semantics of the sentences and the words. And then we move to embeddings that are getting smarter and smarter. Embeddings are great for, semantic similarity, but semantic similarity is not the same thing as relevance. You could have, the question that is written in the same tone or speaks about the same topics as the chunk, but that's not enough to actually find the exact information that you're looking for. And so most approaches today rely on hybrid search, but there's still a step that needs to be taken to, improve over that. And there are many challenges that I can talk about in more details, but the high level is that we really need search to be extremely accurate so that LLMs and autonomous systems can access this information very quickly, very efficiently, and then perform actions and provide answers that are useful. So that's the core that we're trying to tackle and why this is so important.
I think the last question was how you're approaching this differently from others. Right. And to your point, yeah, I think you said semantics isn't the same as relevance, right? And just thinking about how, the current crop of customers you're serving are solving this problem versus how they would use zero entropy, like how big does it move the needle for them, right? Is it a case of, you're far more efficient, with zero entropy? And maybe, I don't know, does it save costs, does it save time? And what are the upsides for companies using your product versus the others?
Yeah, for sure. So there are multiple approaches that exist. I see companies doing a simple vector search. So there are companies that are, vector databases and companies that are solely developing embedding models. And for us, the way that we're thinking about this differently is for us, this is just one piece of the cake. Vector databases are not enough to ensure that you have a very highly accurate retrieval. It's going to help you store embeddings in a very efficient way, which is very important, but it's not going to solve the problem of search accuracy. Similarly, with there are companies that, just throw everything in the context of the LLM.
Yeah.
And that gives you, the LLM capabilities of reasoning, but this is extremely slow and extremely expensive. So our approach is how can you bridge the gap between using LLMs that are very useful tools, that are very intelligent, and using the existing pieces of technology like vector databases and the models that exist to build infrastructure that allows you to search in a way that's accurate and also very fast and reliable. So this is what Zero Entropy is building. We're also developing our own models. So we recently released a re-ranker model, which is completely state-of-the-art and which runs much faster than any other model while being also cheaper. So those are some of the things that we do differently and how we're trying to tackle this problem.
So how are you scaling both, you having your own model and your API where, from my understanding, it's targeted towards developers, right? Rather than large enterprises. So for the LLMs and for the model you're developing, the ranking model, is it kind of just a benchmark to compare yours to other AI labs out there and see how you're performing against them? Or are these developers also using your models to build products too, or just the API that you're providing for them?
They're using both. In fact, the re-ranker is integrated within the search API.
Okay.
Meaning that if you search for a top snippet, for example, you have the option to automatically re-rank the results that you would get directly from the API.
Oh, I see. Okay, that makes a lot of sense now. And
the model is also
what kind of
available as like a standalone product.
standalone? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I wanted to get clarity on, right? If you can also use the model in standalone as a developer.
Totally.
Okay, that
In
makes
fact, there's
sense.
also one version of the model that we released under Apache 2.0, so it's completely open source. And we've seen a lot of engagement and developers, downloading this model and implementing it. So there's a version that's completely open source. There's a bigger, better version that is open weight, but under, non-commercial license. So yeah, those are the two versions that we have, and they can be used as a standalone product.
Okay. And you said, when you compare it current benchmarks to other AI labs, it outperforms them. What labs are we talking about here?
Yeah, so there are a few companies also training re-rankers. I guess the most known one is Cohere. So Cohere has been, training re-rankers. They're at their third version. And I think they were also widely used because it runs extremely fast. And we have been able to both outperform in terms of accuracy and speed.
With less, much less funding, of course.
Yes, that's actually an interesting question because our team was very small, and I think this is another area where AI helped create more AI. We heavily relied on AI tools to help us go faster, and I think doing this in 2.5 months, which is what we did, wouldn't have been possible without those AI tools. So that's very exciting.
Less than 3 months is crazy. Just saying. What kind of developers use your APIs across what industries? And if you can give certain use cases for people less technical, right, listening to this, to kind of, get the basic overview of, what Zero Entropy does and what your clients or your customers use the product for.
Yeah, for sure. So one use case that everyone will know is voice AI agents. So there are companies that are building voice AIs that can pick up the phone, take your appointments, and answer in a very natural way. And to be very effective, of course, the system needs to access all of the company's policy and like all of the FAQs and all of the information required to give useful answers over the phone. And this needs to be very accurate because otherwise you're giving a very terrible user experience. But it also needs to be very fast because for the exact same reasons. So companies building in this space are using Zero Entropy to connect those voice AI agents to an existing knowledge base. So that's a use case that would speak to everyone, I think.
Well, that makes sense. And how many customers are you serving now?
We're serving about 10 customers at the moment.
Okay. And what's the grand plan for Zero Entropy, for the next couple of months, maybe 12 to 18?
Or more.
Okay. Yeah. So just talking about the round, Initialized and Y Combinator. You know what? I think I want to ask you a question about, how you got into YC, right? What was the process like? Was it your first time applying? How did you meet your co-founder to build this? So kind of like walk us through that.
Yeah, for sure. It was definitely not my first time applying. I actually applied multiple times, also for some ideas around the assistance that I talked about when I was still in college also. So definitely not my first time applying. For Zero Entropy, it was the second time applying. And I guess I also wrote an entire blog about my experience applying to YC and, writing the application and preparing for the interview. If anyone listening to this is interested, it's available on my LinkedIn page. You'll see a link to that blog post if that can be helpful. But it was definitely a dream and it was a great experience, better than I expected actually. So yeah, we're very happy to
Also,
be
can you
part of
share
that.
that? I mean, like, how was it better than what you expected? No, I mean, your
So
time at the accelerator, yeah.
So I had experiences of very close-knit communities.
Okay.
École Polytechnique was a military school with only 500 people per year. So, and I had other experiences where, people are very broad,
Yeah.
very close and help each other and really create a very close-knit community. With YC being only 3 months or less, and not having in-person events every day, I didn't think that I would meet that many people and that we would really create a sense of belonging to something. But it was actually way more than I expected. And for me, that's the best part, is having a group of peers that understand your struggles, that can help you, that can become customers, that can become vendors, that can introduce you to people. And that, for me, that's the best part about YC, is really the people and the community. Also, many of our investors are actually part of the YC network. Initialized was actually created by two current YC partners, which are Gary and Harj. We have a lot of, alumni and former partners on our cap table as well. So it's this whole community that I didn't expect to be so close-knit.
And still on YC and Initialized. First of all, for YC, what advice would you give, founders from emerging markets or underrepresented regions and just groups like, women applying to the accelerator? Like, what should they look out for, especially in the world of AI? Yeah, in AI, because like YC these days just, accepts AI companies more than any other industry, right? So it's like, what advice would you give the next self founders looking to get into it?
It's definitely hard because you don't have many role models or examples of people who did the same before and who, look like you or that you can relate to. It definitely makes things harder. But I think this is changing, and I think there are people from all of the underrepresented minorities in YC. So there are always people that you can reach out to.
Yeah.
And if you're truth seeking, if you're actually providing value to anyone, if you're, building something that, makes sense and that you're hardworking and truth seeking and you reach out to people and you ask them for advice, I'm sure that they'll try to help. I try my best to help, for example, like Moroccan founders or women founders asking me for advice. Like that's also why I wrote this blog, to like try to help people. And so I would just say, be truth seeking, work hard, ask for help.
How technical do you have to be to? Does that play a factor?
Could you repeat the questions?
Oh yeah, I said how technical do you have to be, right, to get into IC? Does that also play a role in, the kind of founders that get into the accelerator?
I definitely think that YC has a preference for technical founders, or at least in the team there needs to be um, enough technical talent to build the first version of the product. If you need outside help, that always makes things a bit difficult and you don't have ownership about what you're building. However, I don't think that's a deal breaker, especially with all of the AI tools today. I think distribution is becoming very important, especially for verticalized solutions. So I would say don't hold yourself back. I mean, there are 4 batches per year now. There's absolutely nothing to lose by just applying. So I always tell people just apply. There's absolutely
Fair
nothing
enough.
to lose. It can take 30 minutes to fill out an
Yeah,
application. So just do it every single batch.
that makes more sense. I mean, like probability of you getting into one increases if you apply every
Yeah,
other batch.
yeah.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
can't get in if you don't apply.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But yeah, so still talking about like the fundraising experience and pitching to Initialize or and YC. I mean, obviously going to YC and that opened the doors to other investors, right? And angels from other AI companies. How did you kind of position Zero Entropy to be like, this is what we're doing? Yes, it's a competitive landscape, right? But we are gonna win in this. So what were the kind of, will I say, points that you made, or was it the traction you guys already had, or the team that got you over the line with these investors to back you?
I think it's a combination of all of those. For me, at the seed stage, I also wrote a blog about this if anyone's interested.
Yeah, you know what? I think we should leave you a link to your blog so everyone can like read everything, by the end of this. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think at the seed stage, it's still so early. So I think from what my experience, the most important things are, what is the market? Like, is the market big enough? Because it's hard to change the market. Like, which market are you in? What is the team? Like, does the team have enough, can the team do something in this market that's meaningful? Can this team win this market? And then the last question is how, like, what product, what differentiation, do you have a plan on like how you're going to win this big market? So for me, if you're capable of articulating a sensible story that shows that all of those 3 are like green flags, that's already a solid start. Like, at least people will want to talk to you again. I think for us, definitely the team was a strong point. Also, we think that this market is absolutely massive. Processing all of the private data in all companies in the world is a giant market,
And a green
especially
one too.
AI agents that are coming up. So we think that's going to be huge. And then we had a sensible plan of, our long-term vision of how we were going to tackle this market.
And on Zero Enterprise growth, I mean, you've nailed a strong team and a good product, right? What do you think are the biggest challenges, for scaling an AI company in today's environment? I mean, from your perspective as CEO of Zero Entropy and just more broadly, the AI landscape, right? And how are you addressing them now from your perspective as, a founder?
I think it's definitely keeping up the momentum, strong momentum at all times. And this is changing with the AI landscape, but it's not like you put out a product and then you wait for a year and then you have a new version.
Yeah.
things are really accelerating. And so you really need to have that momentum always ongoing and listen to the trends and listen to what people want and always be state of the art. And that's definitely challenging.
Do you keep up with that by hiring more people or, being more technical as a founder?
I wouldn't say more people. I would say like the best people with the right tools. We
Okay.
haven't hired a lot, and that's voluntary. I think more and more the bar is very high because there's just so much that I can do with AI right now. So that makes the bar even higher in terms of the people that we want to bring to the team. Yeah.
Okay. Pretty much. That makes sense. And as generative AI, continues to evolve, right? What do you think is the next big breakthrough of AI search, right, and retrieval? And what excites you most about the future of AI in general?
Yeah, so I'm very excited about autonomous AI agents that can do multi-hop steps. And that's even the case for search. So things like deep research, agentic multi-hop steps, like I'm going to find this information and then I'm going to read it. And then as a follow-up, I'm going to look for this other information. That's something that's new and that's very exciting to me. And I think we're going to see more and more autonomous systems. Right now, there's still very much a human in the loop, but I'm excited to see what happens over the next few years because I think it's still going to take time when we're going to be able to see agents performing actions end to end. And I think that search is going to be a very critical component of that. The other thing I'm excited about is everything related to memory and personalization. Maybe two users might ask the exact same question, but they don't really mean the same thing. And today, that's not a big deal because if an AI doesn't understand what you want, your intent, you can instantly just correct it. But what happens when you have those autonomous systems or deep research agents that take a lot of time to run? That becomes more and more of a pain. And so having the ability to personalize and create memory and improvement over time for those search systems is going to be very cool. Yeah, those are like the main things that I'm excited about.
Does this translate to consumer apps too, or is this more business facing? Like the
I
two,
think it's both.
okay. So does Zero Entropy also delve into the consumer side of things or not yet?
Um, So we build for developers. Our
Yeah.
developers are building both like in the consumer space and in the B2B space.
So how would that work for the consumer space? Like, if you can give a high level example of how search, using, so there, for instance, building an app, right, for his users and integrating the API with Zero Entropy, right? So what kind of situations would the consumer, for instance, use the app with Zero Entropy in the background?
Yeah, I mean, you can think of all of like any consumer AI app that has like search
Search.
integrated. So there are many examples, but I think there are going to be more. One company that I think is really cool. They're basically building, like an AI LinkedIn. So basically, you can ask a question, and it's going to use your network and the experience of your network to give you a very detailed and very high signal answer. And that's like an example of like a consumer app, but where search is very important.
Okay. And you talked about autonomous agents, and I was thinking about what you said about human in the loop, right? And I still believe, right, with agents that we have, right, that there needs to be like some human factor evaluation, right, that gives, will I say, a yes or a no for like the kind of output it brings, like when you ask certain questions or give it like a certain task, right? If we kind of don't have that in like humans in the loop as evaluators, right, or annotators, don't you think there will be like, how do I put it, less, how do I how do I make this so it doesn't sound wrong? Like less jobs, right? Because when these agents are autonomous and they don't have to be controlled, right? In the real sense, that's what like an agent should do, right? It's like, yeah, like you don't really need humans for anything again.
I think humans are always going to be necessary as supervisors, annotators, evaluators.
Okay.
And we're already seeing this happening. I don't think there's going to be any way to remove those.
But if the agent is autonomous, yeah, like that means it doesn't have any human intervention? Or am I getting it wrong?
You still need to evaluate the output, and you still want
Okay.
to look into the different steps to make sure that things did run as you expected. And you do want to keep training it to make it learn more and more about the way that humans do things, humans think about problems. So I think those aspects, like, we are always going to need humans there for sure.
Okay. I mean, because I was thinking, right, if there is no more like evaluation from humans, right, and all agents are autonomous, then anyways, yeah, that's beside the point. But you talked about like autonomous agents, and I was thinking about this platform called Den, right? I think they're also a YC company, right? You have agents across different, workflows within an organization. Would that be a perfect example of, an autonomous agent within the workplace where, everything can be carried out with agents just talking to each other and making the workplace probably more efficient?
Yeah, definitely. I've seen a few companies, similar companies, and I think that's definitely the way that I'm thinking about it, is running agents in the background. I mean, Cursor also has this now. Running agents in the background, you're still able to see the different steps. You can run multiple agents at the same time, and then you're basically just, proofreading the results and like proofreading the code and verifying that it works as expected. And that's a huge productivity unlock.
Okay. So one last question about competition, and will I say companies that come to mind when I think about searching AI and how Zero Entropy is different from them. So Perplexity and Glean, for instance. So I know they have to do research, but with different verticals. Can you kind of high level explain the difference between those two products?
Yes. So basically, Lean is creating a lot of integrations um, to be able to search across different, knowledge bases. We're more a dev tool, developer facing, and developing the technology that enables to do that. And I don't know if you saw that recently the Slack API had new terms of use, which basically blocks tools like Glean from access.
Oh yeah, I think Salesforce did that.
Exactly. And so that raises questions in terms of how those different platforms are going to be maybe withholding their data and protecting it from outside tools. We're focusing on the infra layer and building the technology that makes search accurate and fast and to make this possible. So that's how we're different.
Okay. And Perplexity is a different ballgame entirely, right?
Yeah. Perplexity are basically focusing on building like a browser for like internet search.
For consumer. Okay, makes sense. And you don't see Zero Entropy going into any of these verticals?
Maybe.
Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah. So I think that's all I have, right now. And yeah, thanks for coming on the show. Just some quick, fire questions, right? About, for instance, what AI product, out there AI product and founder, right? Do you look up to the most in terms of, execution and how the products are being built, right? And also founders in the sense that like, okay, how the person articulates what he or she is building and the vision they have for how their product is going to drive the next wave of innovation, across the world.
Maybe I'm a bit biased, but all of the code related AI products seem very cool to me. I'm a big fan of Cursor and the team at Cognition. I think they're very strong teams, incredible engineers with great product execution, and the growth that they've seen is really massive and inspiring, and yeah, great execution so far, and really look up to both.
I'm sure your product is going to be, up there soon. So yeah, thanks for that. If anyone wants to kind of follow you, where can they reach you? LinkedIn, Twitter, or
Yeah,
your blog?
I'm on both.
Okay.
Yeah, Twitter handle is GHITA__HA. So you can find me there.
Yeah. What about your blog? Can they find you there too?
My blog is on, I should publish it somewhere easier to find, but it's on my LinkedIn bio. There's a link there.
Oh, I would have thought it was on Medium or something.
Yeah, I should maybe move it. I like Notion a lot.
Okay.
And so I just have a Notion site.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's more easier to use as a dev. Thanks for coming on the show, Rita. And this brings us to another episode. to the end of another episode of The Upside. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, and YouTube. And we'll see you and catch you next time. Bye.